So, hi everyone, it's Roger Collier. I'm the music director of Symphony New Hampshire, and I'm pleased to have our principal trumpet with us today, Richard Watson. And Richard, where are you speaking to us from today? And first off, how are you doing?
Hey Roger, fine, thanks. I'm doing great, and happy to be talking about Symphony New Hampshire and what's coming up. I am in my son's music studio, which is in Danvers, Massachusetts. So only about an easy 45 or 50-minute drive away from Nashua right now. The pandemic has definitely taught me to appreciate every performing opportunity that I have, and and I appreciate all the work that Symphony New Hampshire, you and our executive director Mark there have done to keep uh, Symphony New Hampshire and the Symphony New Hampshire musicians active and engaged with an audience through the pandemic. I There's a lot I don't know, and sort of the managing an arts organization is certainly on that list of stuff that I really don't know. But I imagine it's been incredibly challenging, and judging from how few performing arts organizations have been able to stay as active as Symphony New Hampshire has, I just have a lot of respect for the work that our orchestra has done to stay active and engaged through the pandemic.
Yeah, well, thank you. And we're fortunate that our board of directors, our board of trustees, there
Mm,
are a number of physicians on the board. So what's been great
yep.
is getting their feedback because they receive a lot of different studies from different um, doctors in the area, and it's been really interesting to hear about their thought process as we plan the season. So that's been so helpful for us. And I just want to say thank you to all of the board of trustee members who are watching, and of course Mark and I. We've been busy trying to see what other orchestras are doing.
The survival and the ability for arts organization to thrive is so dependent upon who sits on the board of trustees and their what they bring to the table and their willingness
Yes.
to do the hard work so that we musicians can do the easy part of just showing up and playing.
You've been principal trumpet now how many years in Symphony New Hampshire?
This is my 24th season, I counted the
uh,
other day. Yeah.
wow, that's fantastic. So basically right out of, probably right out of college then for you.
I think I was 26. I'm
Okay.
50 now. So I think I was 26 when Royston Nash, our
That's right, Royston.
former and
Yes.
longtime music director, hired
Hmm.
me.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's hard
Yeah,
to believe next year it's quarter of a century, but
that's so neat. That's so well. Congratulations. And
yeah,
how
thank
did
you.
this all start for you in terms of picking up the trumpet and wanting to pursue music as a career?
Yeah. So violin was my first instrument. I started playing the
Oh,
violin when I was 4.
okay.
And in my family, there was, I don't remember the origins of it, but I remember there being an expectation that my brother and I have one sibling, an older brother, who was a cellist, and we started out playing a string instrument, and then when we got older, then we also played a band instrument in addition, right? So we'd play an orchestra instrument and a band instrument, and so my brother played cello and then trumpet, and um, and when it was time for me to choose a band instrument, I also chose the trumpet. Um, I I think I did plenty of stuff because my older brother did it, but I'm
Mhm.
not sure that I don't remember the choice of the trumpet being part of that. I do remember an instrument demonstration uh, that three teachers in our music department did when I was in, it must have been fifth grade. I was probably 10
Mhm.
years old, and they played the opening fanfare from the theme from Rocky. And
Nice.
I just remember hearing that on three trumpets and thinking, "Oh, I want to do
Mm.
that." Like that sound was something that really appealed to me. and so I played both the trumpet and the violin for a few years. I would say I probably stopped playing the violin in public when I was 13, maybe.
Okay.
Um, and I think I liked the trumpet partly because I preferred the trumpet partly because it was the instrument that I chose. I don't remember picking the
Mhm.
violin. I think that was probably my mom's choice, when I was 4. And so I think I like the fact that I picked it, and I I discovered quickly that it was very versatile. That it could be played in band, it could also be played in orchestra, it could be
Right.
played in a classical setting, it could be played in a jazz setting. And I really liked that about the instrument also, that I could maybe I was lazy, just like not wanting to practice 2 instruments. I probably didn't even want to
A lot.
practice one instrument, um,
Oh,
but
yeah.
having one instrument that could sort of be my ticket into many different types of performing experiences.
What were the next steps in that journey after you chose the instrument and played in some of these different groups?
Yeah, so I got lucky. My first trumpet teacher is named Dave Dubinsky,
Hmm.
and he was um, the high school band director and a graduate of Berklee School of Music, and a terrific trumpeter, and a and just a wonderful person, and a very engaging personality. And so Dave was the one that really and he was one of those 3 music teachers who played the opening of Rocky, that hooked me in initially. But I remember going to my lessons with Dave during school. I think my memory is that it was during the school day, and that I'd get pulled out of a class for a half hour or something, and I'd have a trumpet lesson, and I just remember loving it. I remember feeling so happy when I was there in the room with him, and so fortunately, I think partly because I had had some um, uh, good earlier musical experiences, as a violinist. So I was familiar with a lot of general musical things, right? And
Sure,
that
sure.
I'd learned from playing the violin. And so yeah, so I picked up momentum pretty quickly on the trumpet. I went to Walnut Hill School for the Arts in Natick, Massachusetts, for my
Mhm.
last 2 years of high school. And in my last year of high school, started studying with Charlie Schluter, who was the
Yes.
principal trumpeter of the Boston Symphony.
Hmm.
From um, he had at that time, let's see, that would have been in like 86 or 87. So he'd probably
Hmm.
been principal trumpet at BSO. Sorry, Charlie. I wish I could remember the dates. It's
Hmm.
probably 82, 81 or 82 when he took over as principal trumpet.
Yep.
And so yeah, so I loved studying with Charlie. I studied with him from the summer before my senior year of high school through my senior year.
Hmm.
And so when it was time to apply to college, Charlie taught at New England Conservatory of Music in Boston, NEC.
Hmm.
And so that's where I went, because that's where Charlie taught, and I wanted to keep studying
Nice.
with him. So that was 4 years. And
Uh,
after college, I spent 3 years, 3 summers in the Tanglewood Music Center Fellowship
mhm.
Orchestra in 1993, 4, and 5.
Wow.
Including in 94, we got to film the educational video series Marsalis on Music. Wynton Marsalis came
Nice.
and
Nice.
spent a few weeks during the summer. And Sony, like, I remember that those recording sessions, they were wild, they're because they're filming too,
Uh,
right? And the project was so well funded that there are just cameras everywhere. Like, I remember the camera guys talking to the camera guys on break, and they were complaining, like, it's so hard to get a clean shot because, like, the cameras are in everybody else's shot, because we just, like, have so much equipment here.
yeah, right.
But I think, though, that educational series came out beautiful. Wynton did just a
That's
great
so
job
cool. That's
with
so
it.
fun.
Yeah, and
What an amazing
and
memory.
so it's yeah, I feel good to have been able to be a part of that. So that was 93, 94, and 95, and
Mhm.
I didn't go to graduate school. I just started performing and teaching a little bit, and I was fortunate to have because I grew up in the Boston area. It was a little bit easier for me to get started in my performing career, I think, than it
Sure.
might have been if I'd been coming from somewhere else.
Now, when you were a child or growing up, did you attend the orchestra? Was that something that you did, or was that later in life?
Yeah, so I didn't know about Symphony New Hampshire. It would have been still called Nashua Symphony when I was a kid. But I did go to Boston Symphony concerts. There was a um, Boston Symphony did a youth concert series, and my mom always signed me up to go to those, and
Mhm.
became involved in organizing the trips to the concerts, and then became more involved as a Boston Symphony volunteer. And the BSO now has a program. I believe that it is a current program of theirs. They call the Instrument Petting Zoo, where
Mhm.
they have young people, come in and sort of go through and get a chance to like try each instrument,
Yeah, that's great.
and like
It's important.
play a note on the trumpet, play a note on the
Mhm.
tuba, play a note on the violin, play a note on the clarinet. And as you can imagine, it's a complex process. I've been involved a few times, just helping out with the kids playing the trumpet, and you can't do too much with each kid, but the goal is just to get them to be able to make a sound and have that
Yeah.
experience.
Yes.
And
So
but I'm proud to say that my mom was involved in designing that program, the Instrument Petting
ah,
Zoo, and for many years was responsible for, like, she transported the instruments to and from
mhm,
the hall that were used
mhm.
for the kids to try, and got the volunteer musicians who manned each station and helped the
Yes.
kids as they were going through. And so yeah, I was fortunate to be sort of aware of, through my mom, and connected to the Boston Symphony's family concerts
Yeah.
from the
And
time I was young. And going to hear orchestra live, again, it's, I mean, not every experience is going to stick with every person. But I remember going to Symphony Hall in Boston, just like looking around and just seeing that, it's like a palace, obviously.
stunning.
And
It's a stunning
and
venue. Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so yes, I was, you know, I have been the beneficiary of many privileges in my life, among them early exposure to all kinds of music, and especially to orchestral classical music.
How did you
Mm.
learn about what was then the Nashua Symphony,
Mm.
now Symphony New Hampshire? Was there, and tell me about the audition process also. Like, how was that?
Yeah, I was trying to remember what actually got me to the um, audition,
Mhm.
I and I can't remember how I knew about the audition, like how it was advertised, or um, who told me about it, or where I saw a posting for it. But I do remember going to um, the home of our then personnel manager,
Mhm.
Hannah Sherman Raffa, and uh, Hannah. So these auditions were actually in her house, and Royston Nash, our
Yeah,
music director, was there in
yeah.
her house, and so I remember playing for him in Hannah's living room. No, now we have, when we do our auditions, we have screens up, and we have, it's a sort of a yeah, more involved process, and an
Mhm.
audition committee that involves musicians from the orchestra as well as music director, and so but uh, but at that time it was just the music director
That's so
and
cool.
the
And
person auditioning, like, alone in a room, and I remember asking me what I, well, what would you like to play? And I said, "Oh, what would you like me to play? It's your orchestra. What do you want to hear?" And so, yeah, so he asked me to play, several different orchestral excerpts, so he could get a sense of how I played.
sure, sure.
And fortunately, he was happy with that. And
Great.
you know, uh, I because Nashua is so close to Boston, many of our players, most of our players, I would say, come from the sort of
Mhm.
larger greater Boston area, right? The
Right,
greater
right,
Boston
right.
area, right? And um, and we're fortunate to have a tradition of excellent brass playing in Boston. And yeah, so I felt very, very fortunate to be able um, uh, to be the one who was
I bet.
offered this position out of what certainly was a competitive field of musicians.
I'm sure.
There's a special place in my heart for Symphony New Hampshire because I started um, playing there when I was young and not an experienced musician, and I was able to sort of grow up with the orchestra. It felt like
Mhm,
so.
mhm.
So I have an appreciation for the orchestra.
What
Hmm.
are some of your favorite performing experiences or just memories with the orchestra?
I would say in a large sense, one of the most fulfilling experiences that I've had in Symphony New Hampshire has been being able to see, um, from up close and in some ways from the inside, the development of the of the group as a performing unit and
Mhm.
also as an organization, and it's very rewarding. Making connections with audience members, making connections with trustees, making connections with young people. I think those are the things that I remember the most. Going into the public school system and playing
Yes.
educational concerts with the brass quintet. And in fact, I think we're filming one coming up that is going to be used right
It's
in the school
a
systems.
little
Like,
over a week, yes.
yeah, so like
Oh,
and that's a really big deal to be able
so glad to
to
hear that.
be one of those, be the person like letting a kid hear what a trumpet sounds like
Sure.
live up close, maybe for the first time, probably for the first time, like in many, many cases for the first time. And
Yeah.
having that opportunity and that responsibility of making that extremely important first impression on kids. So like having parents on board, not just for their own engagement, but to facilitate the engagement of the kids of the next generation is important.
Mhm.
Um, Engaging with we were talking earlier about our wonderful board of trustees. Engaging with our trustees is
Yes.
extremely important. Engaging with the people who are already going to our concerts is
Mhm.
extremely important, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And strengthening our connections with the people who are, who are already coming and already appreciate what we do, because there's a lot of competition for people's time and attention, and we need to make sure that we continue to earn that, even from the people who are already engaged with us to some
Yeah.
degree. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I would say that's probably, my those are the most meaningful moments for me when it's been, some combination of performing and making music, which I love to do,
Mhm.
and making a connection with uh, and making a connection with someone or some group of people, so that there are more people just who feel a part of what we're doing.
It's a great great point. One of my favorite things to do is open our rehearsals to audience members.
Mm,
That's one of the best things you can do. When this pandemic has come to a halt,
right.
next season, I would love to open rehearsals, have them come up on stage, see the orchestra up close and personal. This will spark so much interest in what we're trying to do. And it's just a really welcoming experience. And this way we can all talk about the music up
Right.
close and personal in a way that we can't do during the concert necessarily. So I'm looking forward to that too. And I hope the musicians will be involved too in welcoming our wonderful audience and our board of trustees members. I love it when we see in rehearsals a board member attend a
Right.
rehearsal. They're amazed by how much progress is made, and where it started to where it ends up is always a great thing to hear. Um,
Right.
and just
Yeah.
seeing that interaction, you know what I mean? That interaction between the musicians, me, it's a great process to witness.
We can embrace the opportunity to have an audience in the performance that understands a little bit more about how we got to that performance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it
Mm-hmm.
lessens the quality of the performance for people to have, read
Right.
a rough draft.
Right. That's a great point.
I think it can make the performance more engaging and more meaningful. And anything we can do to achieve that, I feel like is worth investing in.
This upcoming concert, this live stream, I should say, you
Mm,
are going to be performing in a brass quintet. It's not going to
yeah.
be full orchestra. You're performing a piece, and I was introduced to this piece by an Indian American composer, Reena Esmail. It's
Yep.
called Tuttarana, I believe is how you pronounce it, and
Yep.
it combines a little bit of Hindustani classical music with Western music. Tell me a little bit about what it's like to perform, first off, with a brass quintet versus a full orchestra, and what you're excited about in performing this work by Reena.
Right. Um, so, um, so I haven't read Rena. So, what I know about the piece um, is based on, on what I've read,
Mm-hmm.
about the history of, but it's an interesting history.
Yeah.
The title Tuttarana is a combination of tutti, meaning all, and Tarana, which is a North Indian musical form that's very articulate and very rhythmic. And she wrote it, I believe, originally for a choral ensemble, and and it's really fun to hear it in that form and hear the vocal articulations that in the brass quintet version that Rena later made gets translated into brass articulations, which are very as being a trumpeter, very similar in terms of
Yeah.
the way we use our tongues to articulate.
Right.
So but the like most for me, the most interesting part of the backstory of the piece was um, what seems to have been just an unintentional connection to the Me Too movement and
Uh-huh.
an appreciation of women in history and women in our society, and so the Tarana not only is a North Indian musical form, but also the first name of Tarana Burke, who was the founder of the Me Too movement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the idea that Rena chose that title, not realizing that, and
Uh,
wrote it for, and I think it was even she even wrote it for women's chorus.
I think
I
so.
think I don't think it was even
Correct.
mixed chorus. I
Yeah.
think it was specifically written for mixed chorus,
Yes.
and the fact that happened, um, through chance or whatever, right? Maybe some subconscious awareness,
Right.
but that Rena, says was absolutely not intentional at the time, but that
Mm-hmm.
she really embraced when she realized that. And so, yeah, so I think
Yeah.
that
It's
makes the piece
fascinating.
even more meaningful.
Tell me a little bit about New Hampshire, you've been obviously with the orchestra now, like you said, almost 25 years. You live in Massachusetts, as does the
I do.
majority of our musicians.
Right.
But I've grown to love Nashua during my 2 years here now, close to 2 years. And what is it about New Hampshire, Nashua that you enjoy?
Yeah, well, the music that we get to make there and the people that we get to make it with and for, I think is, would certainly be my primary thing. I love living so close to New Hampshire because my son and I are snowboarders, and so being able to go up to Loon or to
Yeah.
Waterville Valley, um, so much in the way of just beautiful hikes and just, I mean, New Hampshire is such a beautiful state, right? And
It's gorgeous.
so as a full-time performing musician and a parent, like a lot of times I have my head down more than, ideally I would like, right? So I don't always take the time to, well, I'm going to be in Nashua anyway. Like, let me go another hour further north and go for a, hike, or an hour further west and go for a hike on Mount
Right.
Monadnock, or, something like that.
Yeah, sure.
So things are usually, for me, packed in pretty tightly.
Hmm.
But there've been a couple times when, like after Symphony New Hampshire rehearsals, we get out of rehearsal at 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night, and I'd go
Yeah,
up um, to uh, to one of the mountains that had like a midnight session,
nice.
and go snowboarding from midnight to 3 in the morning or
Hey,
something like that,
really?
under the
Oh my God,
lights,
that's fun.
and stuff like that. So every once in a
I didn't know
while,
that was a thing.
I make time to do something cool
Yeah.
and fun like that. But again, like the main thing that brings me to New Hampshire is making music
Right.
and working with the people there who make it possible for us to make music.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. One of the great things about this pandemic has been the fact that we've been able to do smaller concerts in different venues throughout the state
Mm,
of New Hampshire. I tell
yeah.
you, I loved back last October when we performed at the Londonderry Historical Society.
Oh, what a
What
venue!
a venue that
Yeah,
was.
yeah, and what an audience too. Like that was for something that had to be, for safety, had to be outdoors and socially distanced, and the quintet sort of separate from the audience, and like given all of those sort of spatial requirements,
Mhm.
the engagement of the audience, the connection with the audience, I felt like was remarkable. Yeah, I loved that. I
Definitely.
loved that performance.
Well, I have a fun question. This is the final question, but it's name a favorite beverage, can be alcoholic, non-alcoholic.
Scotch.
I like how you think. That goes well, though. Here's the next part, though. That goes well with a particular piece of music.
Scotch. So yeah, that's the special thing about Scotch, is that it goes well with all particular pieces of music. So
I am with
I
you.
have my own preferences for type of, I tend to be more of a um, uh, uh, more of a complex PD, Lagavulin, Lafroig,
Lagavulin, Lafroig, yes, yes.
kind of Scotch drinker. But I'm not, into,
Meaty,
if
meaty.
it's Scotch, or even our executive director Mark there every once in a while even gets me to drink bourbon, and that's nice too. I
Yeah.
don't drink much, but when I do, that's what I drink, and I feel like it goes with everything. So
It really does. It and especially goes well with Miles Davis. I was listening the other night to some Miles Davis recordings, and I was like,
yeah.
oh, this. I think I was drinking a Macallan, and it was so good. The Macallan 15, one of my favorites. Richard, thank you for taking the time today to speak with me and share your feelings about Symphony New Hampshire, your experiences, and thank you for all that you do. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Roger, and I appreciate everybody who takes the time to tune in and check out this conversation. And I hope that if it sparks any questions, that anybody who sees and or hears this video and wants more information, has follow-up questions,
Hmm.
about anything, will feel comfortable getting in touch through Symphony New Hampshire. On our website, there's contact information, and I'm easy enough to get in touch with. So, invite anybody who has any questions, who's thinking about coming to a Symphony New Hampshire concert and isn't sure if it's for you, or has some questions about the trumpet or music in general. Like, I'm happy to hear from you, and happy to do my best to tell you what I know.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. I mean, really, we have a wonderful audience, and there's always interesting stories that obviously that we can share about the orchestral experience and what it's
Mm.
like to be an orchestral musician. So thanks for mentioning that. And
Yeah,
I will see you in a few days. Thank you.
right on. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Roger.